was too easy.
Well, it wasn't that, but
It wasn't easy, but it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, no, it's kind of very logical. So just there are just a handful of rules you have to follow, and then it's pretty good to go. So everybody now with Dreamweaver or something similar and had downloaded all the files. So let's recap what we did last time. So last time we learned about how an HTML file looks like, and that we have to have the doc type with the HTML on the first place, then an HTML tag that being opened on the top and closed at the very bottom. And then inside we have a head tag, an opening and the closing one, and the body tag. And in the head tag, we're putting all the extra information the browser needs, like which language to use, which orientation, which character set. We have here the title of the document. That's the one you then see in the tab in the browser, and links to other files that we're using here in the head. And between the two body tags, we're putting all the content that should be seen for the user. Then we learned that pretty much all tags have an opening and a closing tag. Like for example, a heading 1 has an opening tag, then the text that will be displayed, and then a closing one. And the closing one always has the forward-leaning slash in there. We learned about the 6 different headings. We had a paragraph for text. Then we had a horizontal rule, which we learned is one of a handful of tags that don't need a closing tag. So it's a self-closing one. What else we had? We had a link, an anchor tag. And for the link, we also learned about attributes. For that one, for example, we have to tell where the link is pointing to. For that is a hypertext reference, so href. And then you put the URL you want to go there. Okay, and then you close the opening tag. Then you put the text in that the user should see for the link. And then you close the link. So as you see here, that would be a link. Which other ones we had? We had block quote. Block quote, which is pretty much the same like a paragraph, only it has a little more indentation. So it has a little more margin to the left, to the right, different margin to the top. So we had that one. We had one image even at the end, which is an img tag. And for that, we need a source where the image is located on our file system. So that attribute is called SCR for SRC for source. And then you would put the URL of or the location of the file in your browser. So like for me, it was images, the Austria map. And then we said for images, to be nice to our handicapped people, we always put an alt attribute there. So for alternative text. And there we just describe what is in the image map. And if we really want to be nice to the browser, we can also give the image a width and height here. We don't have to, but it's nice if we have a lot of images so that the website doesn't jump around when images get finally loaded and displayed in the browser. That would be width, I don't know, 500. And then image is also a self-closing tag. So we don't need a second tag. What else we had? Oh, we looked how a comment looks like in HTML. So to write comments for you to know why you did something on the website. And this is the opening tag for a comment. Then you can type your text here and then 2 minuses and a less than sign, greater than sign is the closing tag. Then what was else? We had the text to make something bold. And for bold, we said we used the strong tag because it is also better for the handicapped people to have the strong instead of B for bold. And also for italic, we used the EM tag. Where is that one here? These two here. Just to give the screen readers more background information about what is the meaning of that tag. So then we even had a little, sorry, excursus into CSS, where we had the style. And just stop me if I'm going too fast, okay? So we had basically 3 places where we could write CSS in our HTML file. That would be with an external file that we then link in the head to our HTML file, or we put style tags into the head, or with an attribute in the opening tag, which is not good. But you always can put the style in the head or link to an external CSS file. For CSS, you first need to have a selector. In our case, let's make the heading 1. So with that, I would select every heading 1 on the page. We learned also about classes and IDs, where IDs can only be once on the page, and classes I can apply to multiple elements on the page. And for CSS, after the selector, we have the curly brackets. And between the curly brackets, we have a property and a value. For example, for the heading 1, let's choose the color. Then it's a colon. And then we declare which color we want to use. Let's say red here, and then it's a semicolon. So then for the IDs, we use a hashtag first. Let's call it ID this time. And let's have the color green. Nothing happens at the moment on the page, but as soon as when I apply an ID to an tag. That one changed to green. And the same with classes, only that we can apply classes to multiple tags with an class attribute. Let's put them here. And classes are started with an dot, with a point. And this time we do the background color. Blue. To make it really obvious. So, any questions so far? No. Okay. That was pretty much where we left last time. Or we did a little bit with colors and how to write different colors. And let's open that example from last time. So, first, like now we saw that we can put like the prime 16 colors by name into CSS. Usually it's done with the ASCII code, which starts with a £sign and then 6 digits. Or I can use the RGB method with RGB and then 2 brackets, and in between I have full values or percentages, but I need 3, 1 for red, 1 for green, 1 for blue. Or with HSL with hue, saturation, and lightness, where I have for the hue, I can go with percentage or full value, and the other 2 values are with percentages. And if I want to make something transparent or semi-transparent, I can use RGB and HSL and just add the alpha channel to it. And so I have a 4th value I can go for making it transparent. Okay. Everyone here so far. So that's what we did last time. Okay. So with the last example here from last time, we saw that we can have background images as well. And that one I did with CSS. And here you see for a background image, you use the background, no, not selector, the background property, and then URL with 2 brackets, and in there then within quotes where your image is. And then you have a few other attributes you can apply, you don't have to. And then you also can give a background size, a font size, color. For CSS, I don't throw you too much into CSS. I'll get one by one, I give you a little bit more of CSS, because CSS is really the bigger thing here than HTML. HTML is only around 30 tags, as I said last time, that you have to know. And with generally playing more and more with CSS and looking up on the internet which attributes you can add to a CSS element, you will get more feeling for it. With that, I want to guys show you a good resource for that's a good resource for web design things. So if you go for W3C, the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, they have, so these are the guys who make the rules for the internet. Whenever you have a question what you can do to an element or something. Oh, actually, it's the wrong link. Then you can go there, and especially for the W3 school, you can quickly look up what you can do with it. For example, here with CSS, how it looks like, and let me show you guys how you Google that best. So CSS, let's say background color, and then I would always go with the W3 school link. And there you have an example. You can try yourself something there. And then here you have additional information, which syntax, which additional information you can put into the CSS. For example, with the different color, position, other things you can do with the element. So this is all there for everything. I think I also have that in the handout. I have for you the HTML 1.0. I have within the files for you. But if you want to quickly look something up, just Google it. Google is really the most important friend of a web developer, especially later than with JavaScript. I also introduced you a little bit to the idea of the box model in on the elements. And I showed you guys, if you right click somewhere on the website, you can go to inspect mode. And this is from my work. And then here on the left side, you see all the HTML that is on the website. And if you hover over, you see the elements highlighted. And on the right side, you see the CSS. And at the bottom, you always see the box model of the element you selected, where you see the size of the element, the padding inside, what border it is, and the margin outside. That is for every element, for every button, for every link, for every heading, for every paragraph. You can play with these elements to style your website, make more space between two things or less, or only on one side or on all sides. So we will start playing with that later. Okay. What else we have? Okay. Let's open number 6. Okay. And there we have a little example for the box model. So with that document, we see that I have a link to a style sheet, which Dreamweaver nicely gives us up here, where we can look at that. Where we see so far, I only have a container class with the bluish background, and I gave it a width and a height so that we see something on the screen. And this here is a CSS comment. So it's a /* in the beginning and a * in the end. It can be multiple lines. Okay, like for comments. Oops. So that's how you write a comment in CSS. Okay. And then else here in the body, we just have a div Remember div I said is just like a lasso for multiple tags, where the span, the other element, was a lasso for less than one element, if you just want to have a 1 or 2 words. And the div has a class of container. That's why this is big and blue. And inside we have 2 paragraphs. One has no attribute, and the second one has a content class. So, and now we uncomment the content class in the CSS. And we see that we have a big, ugly border and some different padding and margin. So just to show you guys what the box model before was, I made it really obvious. So the padding is the space between the word content here and the border. And let's make it really big. Then if I just put one size in here, it's for all 4 sides. I could also, if I, like you see here, I could say, especially if I only want to have a padding top, I can write the rule as padding -top. Then it's only for the top, or bottom, or left, or right. Then it's only on the left side. But if I leave the general padding rule and I only have one size in here, it means for all the sides all around. Okay. Doesn't like me anymore. That happens sometimes with Dreamweaver. And if you want to do, for example, only for the top and the bottom 35 pixels, and for the left and right, let's say we want to have 100 pixels. I would do it this way. Then I have 100 pixels here and 100 pixels here and 35 top and bottom. Or if I want to do it for all 4 sides individually, I can write top, right, and then bottom we do 50 pixels, and left we do 5 pixels. So I can say all 4 of these in one line as well. So I don't have to write every single one. I can write them all at once. The same is for the border, and the same is for the margin. And it always starts top, right, bottom, left. Okay. For the margin, it's pretty much the same rule than for padding, only that the margin is from outside the border to the next element. So top 35, then we can say 200 on the right side, and 0 on the bottom. And let's do 25 on the left side. Okay, so the same rule like for padding, we can put everything in a single line, separate line for every side, or I can make all of them at once. And the same is for the border. The border can set, I want to have the border color. Let's do that here. For example, border -color. Okay, I can see green. Then I don't need that one here. And I also could see border size, and I don't even, I have to look up myself how to write the way a border is, if it's dotted or solid, if you don't write it in one rule, because I usually never write it spread out in single lines, because it would be too much work. So let's see. Let's take the example. And if I only have one size here, then it's for all 4 sizes. If I give that then 5 pixel. Now I have to Google it. So CSS. They don't give that here. Okay. That with a comma. Sometimes it's with the comma. No? Okay. As we see for border, we can then spread it out too. So border hyphen right. We could say 15 pixels. That starts to be strange behavior. That might be Dreamweaver itself. As I told you, Dreamweaver is not always 100% trustful with everything. No, it's here too. Okay. Have to check with my own stuff here. I will look up what I did wrong here and then update you the next time. How to write multiple sizes for the border at once. So for the box model, then I can also show you another CSS rule that we haven't done before, is I can align text to the left, to the right, or to the center. And for that CSS rule, that will be align content. And then I can say, oh, no, that's later for you guys. So text align, I can say right, then the word content is on the right side. I can say left, which is the default one, at least for Western countries. And then we can also put center. And that centers content within. Okay. Then while we're here, let me give you some other one. For example, if you have a form and you display something the user puts into a form element and you display that out, you can force it to be uppercase or lowercase. So it doesn't matter how the user enters something. For that, let's do text transform. And then you can say uppercase. So you see the whole word is suddenly uppercase. The same I can do with lowercase. So the capital C is gone. That is usually only used if you display something a user puts in or from a database where you're not sure how the data you're getting is formatted. So you can overrule something. And with that, I want to leave you with the box content file and the questions to the box content. So how the box is made for every single element on the website. No, okay.
I actually have a question real quick.
Sure.
So with how you transformed the box and everything around content in the Word, is that after the HTML coding, or is that's up earlier in the lines?
Okay, so how the browser reads the file. The browser comes here, sees that element, that doc type, says, oh, this is a HTML element, so it's a website. I have to read through the head line by line down. So first line number 3, then number 4, then number 5. And then here he sees, oh, there's a CSS file. Then he says, oh, let's download the CSS file from the server. And then he starts reading from top to bottom here. And then he goes back to here and continues reading the rest of the HTML file. When he had finished downloading the CSS file, he knows or the browser knows the CSS rules, but not where it is applied. And then he sees here, oh, there's no CSS rule for the body, so he puts the body, and the div has a CSS rule, which he already knew, so he applies it immediately. And then for content, and so it's then built up step by step. Was that your question?
Yeah, I was just confused on where we were typing like color and everything.
Okay, so first you usually write your HTML. So you have your structure of the website. And then you start writing your CSS where you make your structure pretty. Does that help you now more? So, okay, so you first, when you put your HTML elements in the website, it looks ugly, plain. And then with CSS, you make it nice and user-friendly to read, colors, font size, different font families, and so on, to make it appealing. That is what CSS is for. Okay. Okay, then let's go to file number 7. And there, I explained 2 other things you can have with the box model. So if we look at the HTML quick, so we have our usual candidates here, like doc type HTML, the head, the title. Then we have some CSS styles in here, which I explain in a second. And in the body, we just have a div with the class of container. And inside there, we have 2 divs with the class of content and the class of box. And I just put some dummy text in between. So these is the red you see in the background is the div with the class of container. And the 2 aqua ones are the divs with the class of content. And then here in the CSS, just to make it what I want to show you guys, I gave the class of container a width and a height, a specific width and a height, the color, and then I said, whenever an element inside is bigger than the container element, then the overflow gets hidden. So it will disappear. And then for the content, in order to have them sitting next to each other, I had to give them a display of inline block. I will explain that a little bit later. Or actually, no, later. And then I give it a background color, width and the height. And in order to make the text center, I made text align center, and I made the line height 200 pixels. So now you see that the two boxes inside have a width of 200 pixels. So both together would be 400 pixels. And our container has 406 pixels width. So we have 6 extra pixels, we have space. So the two blocks inside there are a little bit smaller than the box they're sitting in. And as soon as I give that rule here to it, where I give the two inside boxes a border with a border of 2 pixels. So the box is here, and then on the outside of the box, I put 2 pixel border all around the box. So that makes the box 204 pixels wide, and I have 2 times 204 pixels is more than 406 pixels. It's 408 pixels. And that's why the second one disappears here and flows down. You actually see it on the bottom here a little bit. It's sitting here below object 1 is the object 2. It would be here. Okay. That is because the default box behavior is that it's a content box, and if I put a border around it, it will be added to the outside. So kind of like you have the width of your shoulders, but if you put a pullover over it, your shoulders get wider by the size of the pullover. And because the pullover is added to the outside. And now I can give the box sizing a different rule. Instead of content box, I can give it a border box that say the box is not based on the content inside, it's based on the border outside. And if I put a border in addition to the box, it's not added on the outside, it's added to the inside. I know it sounds complicated. So now the black border is not added to the outside of the box, it's added to the inside of the box, and that's why we still only are 200 pixels wide for every box. Is that understandable for everyone? I know this is kind of a little complicated theme to explain, but it should make sense to you guys. Any questions to that? So you can add it on the outside or on the inside, depending on which box model you're using. Okay, everyone's silent. Okay. Enough with that. Another concept we're having a little bit with number 8. I can position stuff differently on the website. And I know I'm hammering you guys now with stuff you're not playing around with. But I have to give you some base knowledge before we start being creative. So here I'm having just a couple of divs with different classes and with some text in it. And I Gave all of them a width and a height and some basic properties like background color and some border. For the first box, this is static, so which is also the default. The default is always as far top and as far left as possible. So like if you're writing on a page, you always start top left, right? The same for the browser. It would always start in the top left corner. That's the default behavior. Then I can also say, I don't want to have the position static. I want to position something relative to something else. Then I have to give it the position of relative, and then I have to tell it how far from its original position would I go to which side. So for the second box, if I would say nothing, it would just sit just below the first box. That would be its static position, but I said I want to have it relative to that position, and then I can say move it 30 pixels from the left side. So that's why here is a gap of 30 pixels. From the position where it usually would sit, I move it over from the left 30 pixels. I also can say from top 30 pixels, then it moves down from its original position. I also can say right or from the bottom. Here it makes more sense to say left. Okay. That's the difference between static, the default position, and relative. Then there is a fixed position. And the fixed position is fixed to the browser window. Okay. So this one will always be fully to the right and 40 pixels from the bottom. And if you look here on the right side, this one does not change even when I scroll. So this is how it's done if you have a long page and you have the go back to the top arrow on the right side. You see sometimes that always floats on the right bottom corner. This is how it's done with the fixed position to the browser window. And then here we have absolute. That one is a little trickier to explain. So for absolute, you need, it's pretty much the same as relative. Relative is where it should be compared to the browser window, and then move it from its position that it should be. Absolute is, it is instead of the browser, we have another element as parent element. So absolute in that case is the same as relative, only that the red box is not the full browser, it's some other box. And in order to make that work, the red box, I have to give a position of relative, and then the box inside a position of absolute, and then I can move it within that red box, left, right, up, down. See, 20 pixels from the top is this here, and 20 pixels from the left. Or from the bottom. And it's 20 pixels from it's so with relative, the parent element is the browser window, and with absolute, the parent element is the other box it sits in. And then a very new one is sticky. That means it is relative to the area it sits in. So you might have seen it on one website, for example, where there's a headline and there's a block of content. And when you scroll down, the headline stays there, but the content scrolls up till the content is done and you get to the second block of content. But just before the headline would reach over to the second box, it starts scrolling up and away. I can give you guys later, when we do Bootstrap, I have a good example for that one. Okay. These are the different ways you can position something on a website. Then we also can have different overflow states, like we saw earlier. And I have that in example number 9. So here I have 3 divs, boxes, with its own class. And the box, as we see here in CSS, the box is a little with a gray background, but the text is too long for it. And the first and default state is overflow is visible. So if I want to have it like this, I have to do nothing. So whenever the content is bigger than the box it's sitting in, it just keeps being displayed anyway. Might not be what you want. That's why we have the second state here. We have here the overflow is hidden. So, and as soon as I have that, everything that would be outside of the box is hidden. This might be okay if you have a background image or something, but it might not be good if you have text, if it stops in the middle of a sentence. So for that case, we have a third one, which is Overflow Scroll. So it just displays what fits in, but then you get a little scroll bar, and with that one you could see the other content. The kind of little extreme examples I have here for you guys. Questions? Okay. So overflow. Now let's go to float. So number 10. And this will be a fun one for you guys. So here I'm having a couple of boxes with letters in it and a style sheet. And let me start here with the different elements. So some elements are inline elements. Like for example, if I have, let's give you guys an example here on the first one. And please yell at me if I'm too fast or confusing. So an paragraph and the words in it are inline elements. That means every element inside, so here it would be every different character, is in line. And then we have other elements, like for example, the headings. These are block elements. So a heading, can we see that here? Yeah, okay. Here you even see the little display. So a heading will always spread across the whole browser window. That's why it's a block level element. It takes the whole block, so the whole row where it sits in. A paragraph does the same, but the text inside a paragraph is an inline element. So because otherwise every letter would sit in its own row. And there are some CSS rules where I can change that around, where I can make block elements, inline elements, and inline elements, block elements, or I can even mix them. Let's say it's an inline block element. This is specially used for navigation when you have these tiny buttons that you wouldn't be able to press with your finger on your phone, for example. You can say the link is not an inline element anymore, it's an inline block element. And with that, I can give the anchor tag, the link width and the height. So I can actually make the link bigger and easier to click. That would be an example where you use that. Okay. So, and now we're coming to floating. Floating is a way of arranging stuff on the website. It's an older one, but it's still used in certain cases. And just to show you guys how it works. So a div, as we said earlier, is a block element. So every one of these boxes gets its own row. Okay, that's why they're sitting below each other. And now we can have some fun and change the flow behavior. Okay. So every one of these boxes has a class of box. And in there, we could give it a class of rule of float. And they're all floating to the left. Okay. Then they all align from left to right. This is often done with image galleries, you know, where you have one image next to each other, and instead of having them sitting below each other or any strange other behavior, you can give them a float left. If you're really fancy, you can even give them a float right. But then, as you see, the order starts going backwards, because the first element that floats to the right is the A, and then the second one is the B, the third one is the C. That's why it's built from the right to the left. Okay. There is no float center. There's only left or right.
Okay, weird question, but is there a float diagonal?
No, there's only left or right.
Yeah.
Or none. So let's do left here. And then you can also mix and match all of that. So here, let's give every letter has also its own class or was an ID. Let's pick one in the middle, F. And that one, let's give that one a float right. Okay, so only the F floats right, everything else floats left. That would be one if I want to put one thing to the right side. So then let's go and select, for example, G, and let's stop the float. And that is done with clear. Clear. And then you can say, oh, I only want to have cleared the left floating ones, or I only want to clear the right floating ones, or I want to clear both. Okay, so that means it's kind of like a hard return. It's like a line break. This floating stops with G or before G, and G starts a second row. So if I say, for example, I, and give that a float right again, it's below F because we stopped the floating for both sides. If I would say here left alone, clear left, no. Does not want me to. Yeah, you could stop the float only for one side and then let the other side continue floating, which only gets you in trouble later on if you play with all of that. There are easier ways to do it. Usually at the moment, it's only done, for example, if you have a long text and you want to put an image within the text and have the text float around the image. So then you would use the float for the image left and right. Because for all the other stylings, there is now a grid and flex box. Questions? I see some faces that have questions, but don't ask. Okay. So float is cool. Okay. Let's go to the next one, which we talk briefly about opacity. This is number 11. So here we have goat image. And I gave it a class of opacity just so we can play with it here in CSS. So with the class of opacity, if I give it 0, it's fully transparent. You will not see the image at all. And I give it an opacity of 1. It's fully visible. And the same with the alpha channel for the colors. It's only between 0 and 1. So if I want to have it 50% transparent, I would say 0.5. Now we see that the orange from the background comes half through the image. Or if I want to have it more or less, you don't have to play with the settings, what looks best for you on the website. If you want to have the background shine a little bit through one of your elements. Okay, so that is done with the CSS opacity. Questions? No, okay. I think that was an easy one. So now let's open number 12, start. So it's another example here. We have some paragraphs, some diffs, some images. One image has an alt attribute, one does not. And all looks pretty plain. And now with CSS, the only thing written in CSS I give you guys is for the images that they have a width and the height so that they both are the same size. And now we can write some CSS for us. So everyone remembers what the difference between the div and the span is? No. Okay. Remember a div like this here is like a lasso that goes around more than one element. So here within that div, I have a paragraph, another paragraph, and another div with a paragraph. And all these three things are within that one div with the class of third. If I want to have, for example, just highlight the word also, I have to put that in a span tag, which is like a lasso for less than an element, so like for smaller. Like if you just want to highlight one word with bold or something, I can do something else here with the span tag. I can do in all different kinds. With bold or strong, I can just make it bold. And also remember, if the div is first and then the paragraph, so if one element is first and the second element opens inside, the inside one has to be closed first and then the outside one. Okay, you cannot turn these two around. It's like in mathematics. If you have two brackets, first close the inner one, then the outer one. Okay, so now to see different CSS selectors. Okay, we know that we can use a tag. So every heading one, every div, every paragraph on the website, just with the name of the tag. In our case, let's use one body. So I even can select the body element here, okay? And what are we giving here? Background color. Any preference? No.
Purple is my preference.
Purple, okay. Purple, okay.
Oh,
So-
maybe not. It's very hard to say.
Okay,
Maybe a teal.
How about a nice
That's
blue?
fine. Yeah, I agree with that.
let's go with that one.
That's fine.
Okay, so I can even select the body. When I select the body, the whole background of the website is in action when I select that one. Okay, so that would be a tag selector. Then we also knew about the class selector. Anyone remembers how we select the class in CSS? No.
With hashtag, or was
that was
that
the
the
ID.
ID?
That was the ID. With a class is with the dot.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, which one we're taking here? Let's say first, because I have a class called first. Okay. Let's make that one red. So color, red. So, and now we see we have two elements on the page that have a class of first and the first and second. So first and second is that one here. And this one has a class of first and a class of second. Okay. This one has an ID of first. That one is, that's why it's not red. Okay. Okay. So class. Then like before we had ID. How was the ID selected? Just had it.
Hashtag.
With the hashtag. Okay, let's select here first. And let's give that one a blue color. Okay. Okay, now we see that one is the first ID and is blue. So I also can select an element that has two classes. So do I have an element that has a second one? So here I have one element that has the class first and the class second. Okay. Or let's give that one here a class second as well. Okay, just to show you guys. So we have one element who has a class first and the class second, and one element who has also the class second, but not the class first. So if I want to have selected only the one with the class first and second, I would write here dot first and then dot second. Oops. But no space in between these two. So that means I'm looking for the one element that has the class first and the class second. Okay. What are we making this one? Green. Okay. As we see here, the other one I gave the class of second is not worked on. It's only the one that has both classes. So then I even can say a parent-child relationship. So I could say, oh, go to the to the paragraphs that are inside the div with the class of third, but not that div, that paragraph within the div without class, and also not these paragraphs, okay? And for that, I would use div. So I select div, and then with the space, P. So here I'm saying, I want to have all paragraphs that are inside a div. Okay. And these ones make also a color. Aqua. So now we have all three paragraphs inside the one div attacked with our CSS rule. But what if I just want to have a specific one inside the first one? Like I said before, I could say div and then give it, say only for the other ones, the div with the class of third and then paragraph. So with that rule, I'm saying, oh, select every paragraph that's a child of a div with a class of third, okay? That would not include our last one here. What are we giving that one? A background color. Something obvious, silver. Okay. So I have said too much. So this one is also inside of the div, the third one. Okay. If I want to have just the child ones, not the third one I tried to do earlier. So I have to say it a little different. I have to say the divs with the class of third. And then I use the child selector, which is a greater than sign and P. That means the direct children of the parent element, the div with a third. And what are we using that one? Let's give that one a background color of silver. Okay. We should be able to read. So if I only have the direct children of the parent element, I'm only selecting the first two, because these two paragraphs are direct children of that div with the class of third. That one is not. That one is a direct child of a div, and that one is a child of div and third. So that's why that one is not triggered with that rule, with the direct child. As we've seen before, it was triggered with the other one because it's a P within the div, okay? That's why there are so many different ways to select only certain elements in there. So then I can also select an tag with a specific attribute. For example, as you might remember, we had the two images here and only one of them had an alt attribute. So let's select that one. We go for the image. But then we only want to select that one who had square brackets this time. The only one who has the alternative attribute. So the alt. And let's make that one bigger with 50%. Okay, so only the one who had the alt tag in here got triggered this time. So that's how I select elements by an attribute. And if I want to get fancy, you can have multiple parent-child pairs in a row as well. Let's use that one. Div with the class of third. And then there is a div inside. And inside that div, we have a paragraph. And we only want to trigger that one paragraph. And what want to give that one background? Background color. And something ugly, yellow. So that's how I can select that one. So here I said, okay, look for the div with the class of third, and inside there must be a div. So it looks paragraph is not the div, paragraph is not the div. Oh, here's the div. And inside there is a paragraph. And then I said, oh yeah, here it is. And then that one gets the yellow background. And excuse me if I'm not typing everything out myself and use the Dreamweaver to finish it, but I cut my finger a couple of days ago. I can't type so good at the moment. And then you have some pseudo selectors. Okay, so these are mostly for links. So link is an anchor tag, and I can give that one a color of whatever I want. So then pseudo selectors are with a colon and then something else. The base state of a link would be link. And then I could give that one a color. Red again. So see, our link is red. And then there are different states for different elements. For example, for a link, I also can have a state of hover. When I'm hovering with the mouse over the link, I can give that something different. So that would be done with a, then colon, hover. What am I making here? Let's give it a different background color. And blue. Okay, so yes. If I'm now hovering over the link, it gets blue background. Okay. And then if I ever click the link, then I can trigger a state of visited. So that would be, and I can give it then a different color. Okay. So if I would ever have clicked that link and come back, not in Dreamweaver because it doesn't work for links in the preview here, it would be silver. Okay. Questions? No, yes. No, okay. Okay. So let me show you guys an example of what you can do with all the crazy stuff I just showed you. Okay. No, I don't want to. Number 13. Okay. So here we have our HTML file. I have a commented out link here for a CSS file. And in here, sorry?
Are we supposed to be saving these after we're done?
You can. Most of the time I have a number with the start and the finish. So the start is the start. And then if you ever type with me and you mess up, you can go and look at the finish version and then see what you typed wrong or if how it should look like.
Okay, thank you.
So here we're having something new. We never had that one here before, a UL tag. This is an unordered list, okay? So bullet list is also called. And there's also a DL, OL, sorry. OL for ordered list. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instead of every single dot. Or you can then even change it in CSS and say instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it should be Roman letters, or it should start with the alphabet and A, B, C, D, or every mix and match you want to have, okay? And then there's a third list. It's a definition list. That one would be DL. And in the definition list, you have a definition title, a DT, and then a DD, a definition. So that explains. We have that later. I just wanted to show you guys that we have the 3 different options of lists. So we have an unordered list, bullet points. Then for every item in the list, we have an LI for a list item that opens here and closes here. Sorry. And inside every list item, I have an anchor tag. So that makes the whole thing clickable. And I just have here an href with the hashtag. So if you just have the no href there, it will not be clickable. If you write href and nothing within the quotes, it will not work either. So just as a placeholder, we put a hashtag in there, which just tells the browser, act like a link, even it doesn't point something, but I promise later I will put something in there, okay? And inside there, we have a heading 2 and a paragraph, okay? If we look at this here, it doesn't look too good, right? It's just an ugly list with heading and some small paragraph. And that goes down here, the whole list, list item by list item by list item. Here I have an ID of a town I grew up, And here I have an ID of ship. This is where we then put background images onto these ones, okay? So just something that I can target it. So then let's uncomment the link. And suddenly it changes a lot, right? So every list item suddenly is one of these sticky notes, and you can hover and they all look kind of just thrown there with the background images. And now I show you how this is done, okay? So why here, okay. So if we look here at the CSS, you can forget line number 1 and 2. This is just saying we use UTF-8. It's the same like the metadata tag here, okay? Then here, the @ sign and font face. Whenever you see something with an @ sign in CSS, it means, oh, here comes a block of something other than normal CSS. It's still normal CSS, it's just a block of something else. Okay, and here are we importing a font from a web somewhere. So actually from, I think that's Google Fonts. Okay, so, and we have, import font face, and then inside here we have some rules. So we import, we have to give the browser some information. So whatever we're importing has the font family name of Reenie Beanie. It has the font style of normal, the font weight of 400, and it lives there on the web, behind this web address. Okay, so far we just told the browser to go in the internet and get the font and download it, but we didn't put it somewhere. So it's just somewhere in the storage. Then here, as another new selector for CSS, we have the star. And the star simply means select everything and anything and just take all the margin and all the padding away. Because every browser has its own default setting of, for every element, it has some default settings. That's why some websites will look a little different between Chrome, Safari, Edge, okay, Firefox. That's because every browser also has its own set of CSS rules that we are overriding, or we can override, but if you don't trigger it, the browser defaults come in, okay? And with that rule, we're just taking all the padding and all the margins away, which is nice because you can do what you want, but on the other side, it gives you more work because you have to give now every element a padding and the margin when you have, when you want to have it more than 0. Okay, you have to reapply it. So then here we select the body tag. And as I say here, it's a fallback font. So if we cannot download the font from the internet, because something happens, Google gets hacked or something, then let's use that font family, Arial. And if that one's not on the machine of the end user, pick something that's sans serif, okay, without curlies at the end. Then the font size should be 100% and the margin should be 3 ems. Later about what ems are, okay, it's a unit of measurement in CSS, okay. And then we say, oh, for the whole body, we use the background image, and that one lives on in the folder here, okay. Then I selected every heading 2 and every paragraph. So the 2 elements that were inside the link, I give it the font size of 100% and the normal font weight, so it's not so flashy coming out. And then for the unordered list, the bullet points, I stripped the bullet points away. So I selected the unordered list and every list item. And with the CSS rule of list style, you can give your bullet points different meanings. So you can have big round bullet points, square bullet points, white bullet points with a black margin, or you can even have an image of your liking, a little light bulb or something for every bullet point. But if we say none, we take all the bullet points away. Then I also made the overflow hidden. That means everything that's bigger than the square box here gets hidden. So if you have too much content there, it will not overflow the little sticky note. And some padding. Then for the link inside of every one of the sticky notes, I set text decoration none. That means that usually links have underlines. So I took the underlines away. So it's not so obvious looking like a link. I gave a background color. I made it display block. That means so that everything inside here is fully spreading the whole thing. I gave it the width and the height and some padding. And then for the shadow here behind the little shadow under the card, this is done with box shadow. And this is the spread to the bottom. This is this how much the shadow goes to the bottom, how much the shadow goes to the left or right, or bottom or top, if I have plus or minus. How much the shadow is spreading and which color the shadow is. And then for the little rotation effect I'm having here, that like if I'm not hovering over, you see that the card is a little tip to the left. That is done with transform rotate, and I did it 6 degrees to the left side. And it's not, because it's not supported by all browsers, like Safari and Chrome didn't like it too much. By now they probably do. These are some prefixes you can put here. So like hyphen, WebKit hyphen is for Safari and Chrome. Hyphen MOZ is for Mozilla. Hyphen MS is for Microsoft. And with that, you can make it work a little sooner than the full browser update state. And here, when you hover over it, there will be a transformation. It takes 0.15 seconds, and it's straight, so it's not accelerating or slowing down somewhere. So if I hover it, it just turns to something else that I see later. And again, everything that's too big is hidden. Then I make them float left so that they're all next to each other. And if they're too wide, they start the second row. Then I make the heading 2s a little bigger and bold, so that Monday, Tuesday, and so on. Then for the regular paragraphs, here I say, oh, for the paragraphs, use the font family Reenie Beanie. So that's the one we imported earlier. And then I had to make it a little bigger. And now the fun part is I said every second list item has to rotate to the right. So here, Tuesday, title, and so on. Every second one, I made here, I selected list item and then colon and then nth child. So this is another pseudo CSS selector. And then within the brackets, I could say even or odd. So every 1, 3, 5, 7, or every even 1, 2, 4, 2, 4, 6, 8, 1 has to do something. And I rotated it to the right side and so on and so on. And then I also said, oh, but every third one, 3n, every third one does something completely different. And then every fifth one does something completely different too. And that makes it look like a random being put out there. And then here are the rules. If you hover over it, and there's another rule, focus. This is more for screen readers when you go with the tabulator over a website. And whenever, or if you have a form and you click into the form field to type something, then you bring that element to focus. And I gave it a different box shadow, and whenever you hover over it, I made it a little bigger with the scale of 1 1/4. And with the set index, I made it hover over the other things. And then here with the IDs, I gave it background images. And that's all I did. Don't be intimidated by that. I wouldn't have done that within an hour or 2 or 3 or 4. So I had to play a long time with that too. So it's not that this is something you will do every day. Okay, it's just to showcase you what you can do with 100 lines of CSS. Okay. Questions to that one? We had some new things introduced here too. No, okay. So then in between, we can go about some units. Okay, let me close it here. And let's go to my start exercise here again. Put something here to show you. Okay. Units. There are a handful of different units. Some absolute units are in inches, millimeters, centimeters, pixels. So these are absolute units. So if I say heading 1, just that you see some difference, font size, 25 pixels, okay? Then the heading is exactly 25 pixels high. 55, okay? So absolute units, this will be 55 pixels on a Jumbotron. In an ice hockey stadium, it will be 55 pixels on your cell phone. It doesn't matter how big the screen is. So there's an absolute size of 55 pixels for that one, okay? Instead of pixels, I can also say millimeters or inches, okay? Inches would be a little big. So I can have these absolute units, and then I have relative units. A relative unit, for example, is, let's say here, 3m, okay? And m comes from the word m. So it really measures the size and the width of an m in that character, in that font type. And based on that one, you scale all the other letters up or down. So it's a relative unit. it also is, if you have something else in there or a different font family, it will be bigger or smaller depending on the base set of the M in that font family. Okay. Let's showcase that here. Font family. Pick one. See, the size changed. That didn't change too much, but you saw in the first one that the font size itself changed depending on which font family we're using. Okay, so relative to the font family, the size changes. Then there is another one, it's called rem, so relative EM, and this is if you have set a base font size for all your fonts on the website in the body element, for example, and then you reference that to the overall font size. Not used too much, gets a little weird if you're playing too much with it, so don't worry too much about it. And then there's also another unit, which is percentage. We kind of started with the colors and some stuff before. You can even give that one here, say 50%. Okay, that's 250%. I can give it a percentage too. And this also a relative unit. There are other units too, like window width or window height, where you can say, oh, an image or an element is only half the size of the browser window width, and it will always only be half the size of the browser window. Even if you resize your browser window, it will change its size. That is the power of the relative units compared to static, so to the absolute units. Okay. Questions on units? No. Okay. I'm working you guys hard today, huh? Okay. Now, one bigger thing today. Let's open number 14, start. And as the title tells you already, tables. Tables are a blessing and something absolutely awful in web design. The old websites in the beginning of the internet were all table-based. So you had to cut your image into little tiny pieces and then put them together on the website in table cells to make it look somewhat. So it's, but it's really useful if you want to display data on the website. So for that, we go into the body element and let's create a basic table. And to create a table, we have to have a table tag. Okay, now we have a table. Now we just have to put something inside. Okay. Usually a table is, if you think about, if you have an Excel spreadsheet, there are rows and columns. And the way a table is set up in HTML is first are the rows and inside the rows are the columns. So we have TR for table row. Okay, so I have one row here, and inside there we have the columns. We have two different ways of table fields in there. For the columns, we can have a heading or just plain data. So I imagine in the first row, you usually have a heading. So that is done with TH for table heading. What are we writing in here? Let's have the first one an empty one. So non-breaking space. Okay. And then as a next one, we have January, February, and let's go with March. Okay. So now we have our first row and with our 4 columns. Okay. And if we want to have a second row, we have to create another table row. And in there, what we're putting here, let's say oranges. Oops. Let's put that one also in a headline, heading. Oranges. Oops. And then table data. Generate 15 oranges. In February, we have 20 oranges. And in March, we have 30 oranges. Okay. Just to have some data. And let's do the same for apples and pears. So I just copy the whole row 2 times and change oranges to apples and pears and change some numbers. So that we're not having the same all over again. Okay, now we already have our little table here. So now we can do some other things with it. So if we want to give our whole table a caption, we can do that before the first table row or after the last one. Okay, and that one is with caption. Latest fruit sales. Okay, so now we have our caption over it. This is something else you can do. And then we can also have some other things like I can insert, for example, another row here, just to show you guys something. And what are we putting here? Cool. Oops. Table header. Okay, so here, as before, we know that every table header or element is just like one column, but I can tell that element that it should span over multiple columns. And that is done with an attribute of colSpan, okay? And then I have to tell it how many we want to spend. This time, let's say 4. And with that, it spans from the very left part to the very right part, okay? The same can be done with a row span. Let's do that one here and write something here. Just to see you guys. Row span. Let's use here 4 as well. And that one spans now all these 4 rows. Okay. This is if you want to put extra information in there. And then you should, if you have really concerns about handicapped people as well, you would put extra attributes into the headings to tell the screen reader, especially if you have very big tables, to tell the screen reader which heading is related to that field that you're in. Because the screen reader just reads every file. It would say January, February, March, oranges 15, 20, 30. And now imagine if you have a very long table, it would say, oh, every month of the year, and then say oranges 15, 12, 13, 45. Somewhere you don't know anymore where you are in the table. And then you can give extra elements in there to tell the screen reader to also say January apples 45. Okay, you can do that with attributes. If you're interested, I show it then later. I just want to have you know that you know that this exists, okay? And if we're really fun, we can add some CSS here. Link, href. Let's find the CSS for that. So this was 14. Okay. Okay. So, and now we have some extra fields here with CSS. So here with TH, I select all the table headers, give them a height. I can select the whole table, give it a width. And if I say margin left and margin right auto, that tells the browser to see how big that element is and calculate the leftover size of the width of the screen and put half of it on the left and half of it on the right side. So basically it centers the whole element by itself. It's one of the tricks to center something. I gave the whole table a border, and then every element can have a border too, because if you give the table a border, it would just be for the outside of the whole table. If you want to have every cell have a border, you have to give every cell a border. Then padding for cells, that's the space between the cells. Then you can align, for example, the numbers are aligned to the right and to the bottom. So if it's 2 lines, the number would be on the bottom and not on the top or in the center. makes it a little more easier to read. Give some background colors, and that's pretty much it. Okay. And suddenly a boring table can look a little bit happier or easier to read. Okay. Questions on tables? Not yet. Okay.
Can you
Yes.
go back to the HTML
Sure.
for, okay. So I imported the same file, but my table didn't change.
Okay. So you imported the styles for 14?
Yes.
Okay. And you have these two here, the relation and the type?
No, I don't have that.
That's important.
Okay.
So did it change now?
No.
Okay. Okay, did you put the link within the head?
Within the head. Yes.
Okay. You have the href equals.
Yeah, href equals styles 13 CS.
That's it. No space in here between the href and the equals and the quotes.
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you good?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on tables? No. They're coming. Okay, then let's go to, how much time? Yeah, let's go to lists, which is number 15, start. So here we have some boring lists, or actually not so far. We just have some text in here. So here first we have an unordered list. So let's make that one an unordered list with an UL tag on the beginning, and we close the UL tag on the bottom. Okay. As we see, we already got some padding to the left. And now let's give all our different elements and list item tag and close that list item tag. And voila, we have all list item with bullet points. That's an unordered list. Let's make that a little nicer. Okay. Everyone good? Okay. So that's the one we had before. Now for an ordered list, I said instead of UL, we do an OL for ordered list. And we have an opening and then closing one at the end. And then for everyone in there, we do a list item again. And we close that one at the end. And voila, we have a numbered list. Okay, everyone good? Okay, now we also can mix match lists with nested lists. So let's give the outer one an unordered list. Okay. Okay, and then just to be fun, everyone gets a list item. Okay.
How do you do that where you can?
Oh, yeah. This is one of the developer shortcuts. So for me, I'm on a Mac, so it's Command. Okay, so I hold down Command and then click on every other place where I want to have a cursor. Okay.
Do you know what it is for Windows?
The one left of the spacebar.
It's Control.
Oh, Control. Okay.
Thank you.
It's a fun shortcut if you write the same thing over and over again. Okay, so here we have an unordered list, so everything gets a bullet point. But for the Mercedes, for example, we want to have model A, C, and E in a separate list in there. So let's just give us here 2 lines and give another unordered list so that you guys see how that ones look like. Okay, so, and by default, it gets a different style for the bullet points so that you see a difference, but you can also do it with an ordered list and then you get numbers in there. Okay, and it gets indentation and so on. So you can really build something quick and easy out. Questions on that? No. Okay. And then, as I promised you guys before, the definition list. And that one is done with DL for definition list. And then we're closing that one. And here for the, what is that one? Definition. No. What was it again? Oops. Okay, maybe I remember. So the definition is the explanation. And The heading is no. Now I have to Google it again. Now you know how often it is used in real cases. So definition term. Definition term. No. I think I've never used that one in a real life example. Okay, so the definition term is not indented. Sometimes it even gets a little bolder font or something, and the definition, the DD, is then the explanation to the terms, which gets the indentation. That's the 3 lists we have in HTML. And I've never used the definition list ever, but it's there. Okay. Guys, feeling for another one quick? Okay.
Sure, why not?
Okay. So then let's open number 16. Okay. And here we play a little bit with block, inline, and inline block elements. Okay. So in the HTML, we have 2 headings, which we know from before are block elements, 2 images, which we see here that they are next to each other, which means that they are inline elements. And then we have an unordered list here with the list items. And in these list items, we have anchor tags. And for an unordered list, which is a block element, they're all stacking up on each other, but we're making a navigation out of that one. So we're making that next to each other. And then we have 4 paragraphs here, which are also itself, the paragraph is a block element, but the content inside is a list element. Okay. So in the top here, we have a style already prepared for us. So, and now just to show you guys the difference between the block and the list element, let's select the heading 1. Okay. And give it a display of inline. Okay. And as soon as I click here, you see that the headings are floating next to each other, and because the headings and the images are inline elements, they're all now in one row. Okay. To turn it back the other round, let's select the images and make the images block elements with display block. And you see the images are not floating next to each other anymore. So with display inline and inline block, you can mess up your whole website in a way you may want to have it, okay? Then what are we doing? Something fun. Let's select the paragraphs and give them a color of red. So we're just training. Okay. Then, oops. Let's have the div. Let's select all the divs and give them a background color of silver. Oops. And then select the div with a P inside. So the P inside of a div, the other way around. And give that one a color of blue. Okay. It's still not the last one. And for that one, we can select the span and give that one a green color. And that one is just the one word. Here, just the one word. Okay. And we always selected the div who has, or the paragraphs within divs. So that's why we never got the last paragraph selected before. Okay. And because I promised we're playing some with the navigation here. Let's have that one here because you can actually use that later for the navigation. Okay, so first we select the whole unordered list and give it a display of inline block. So we're mixing now both inline and block together. So now we have it as block elements, which can have a width and a height, but they also will be displayed as inline elements as well. Okay. To give them something, a second rule, we take the bullet points away, list style none. Okay. For the second one, we select all the list items in the unordered list. And make them float left. And voila, they're all floating in one row. So it already looks a little bit like a navigation. Let's give them a width of auto so that they're taking as much space as they need. So if you have more than one word in the anchor tag, it does not cut the word off after a certain amount of pixels. Give them all a border right. And what are we giving them? 1 pixels, solid and black. Okay. So now we can take, where is it here? Now we can take the pipe symbols out of here because we're doing that with a border right. Okay. So if you look here, the first one has a border right, the second one has a border right, the third one has a border right, but the first one doesn't have a border left. So now we have to give our unordered list that one. Sorry. So unordered list, list item, and now let's select the first list item with a pseudo selector, first of type. And give that one a border left. Of 1 pixel, solid black. Okay, now the left, we have that one here too. Now let's select all the links inside the unordered list. Let's make them display block. Okay. So now we can give the links a width and a height, and the text decoration of none. So the underline goes away. Some padding of 0 on the left side, 10 pixels, 0 on the top, 10 pixels of left and right, and 0 on the bottom. And a color. Okay. And now when you hover, let's do something with the links. When we hover, okay. No, did I write something wrong? Oh, here. Okay. Questions to that? Okay. I think that's enough for today for you guys. Any questions to today's class or anything else?
A lot though, but
Write it up, send them to me, or write them now, or ask me now. No problem, okay? I'm here to make sure you guys understand that.
thank you.
Anything else? No. Okay. Then I'll see you guys on Monday. Okay.
Sounds good. Have a good night. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you guys too. As I said, if you have some question, I would just try using what you see me doing here a little bit. How did I do it? I took a newspaper and just tried to replicate one page of the newspaper as an HTML site. So that's where you have a heading, some paragraphs, some images, left align, right align, just play something with that, and then you run into trouble or not, or, you know, the more you do, the easier it gets.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll give it a try.
It's only the start that's the hardest one. Okay. Have fun, guys. Good
Okay.
night.
All right. Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Hey, Professor, could you put me down for attendance? I was just a couple minutes late because I had to get my charger.
Okay. So how can I help you?
I just wasn't sure if you took roll.
Sorry?
Did you take roll to be in new class? Because I was gone for the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not that 100%, you know? Yeah, no, as soon as you, when you get the essence of that class, or if you have trouble, tell me. I even have some material I can give you in addition, or even with LinkedIn Learning, so formerly known as lynda.com, with some courses. They are similar or around the same content than I do, to help you if you need something of that. Just let me know.
Okay, yeah, no, I've done maybe like an hour or two free courses, so yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Just let me know whenever you have trouble with something, okay?
All right, thanks.
Okay. Good night.